Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video today I'm going to be showing you how you can use Dependabot and Github Actions to automatically update dependencies in your project. Let's get into it. So the first step is to create the Dependabot.yml file, and we're creating it inside of this .github folder, and this folder holds everything that concerns GitHub Actions, so the workflows, the config files, anything. Okay, so first things first, in the Dependabot.yml file, we want to indicate the version. So the version that is native, the version of Dependabot that is native to GitHub is the version 2. The version 1 is called Dependabot Preview, and we want to specify this because this is what is native to GitHub and this is what we would like to use. The second step is to indicate the updates key. So the updates key, the first thing is to indicate the package ecosystem that we want Dependabot to run against. So because this is a Nest.js app, not Next, Nest, which is a Node app, we are using the npm package ecosystem, and you can verify that by looking at package.json and package-log.json. Even if we're going to be using yarn, even if we're using yarn here, like a yarn.log, we'll still be using npm package ecosystem. The next is the directory key. For this, it's a location of the package manifests. So the package manifest is the package.json and the package-log.json. And we're just trying to tell Dependabot that it should look for that at the root level, which is here. And the next key is the target branch, which is the branch to create pull requests against. So this might be master for you, it might be main, it might be develop, whatever branch that you want Dependabot to create its pull request against. You specify that as the target branch. For our repo is master. After specifying this, the next is to specify the schedule. So Dependabot runs, we can specify when we want Dependabot to run, how often we want it to run, and in what time zone. So that's what we do. We're doing here. We want it to be every day, and want it to run at 8 a.m. every day, and I'm in Europe, so we want it to be Central European time. After specifying the schedule that you want the Dependabot PRs to be created in, we can also specify the pull request branch name, the separator that we want. There is currently no way to specify a particular branch name. So for us, we want, Dependabot does this by itself, but we can specify separators that we want to be in the name of the pull request branch name. So I'm going to show you how this looks like in the UI for a generated Dependabot PR, and we'll see how this separator comes into play. But yeah, we're specifying that we want it to be a dash. We want the names to be separated by dash. Moving on, another thing that we can specify for every Dependabot PR are labels. And labels, as we'll see when I show you in the UI, it's you can specify any type of label you want. For me, I'm just specifying that Dependabot, but this is just for me to be able to know that a Dependabot PR with the label Dependabot was open. And you can specify anything. If you want to have a bug, if you want to specify security vulnerability, whatever it is, you can specify it in the labels. And another key that we have is the commit message. So we have the ability to configure the prefix of every commit message that Dependabot opens. So if you have a particular way that you would like Dependabot PRs to start out, like the commit messages of the Dependabot automated PRs to start, it would be a good idea to specify the prefix like so, and we'll see an example of a PR that's been created by Dependabot and how the prefix commit message fits in, how it looks. And then the last but not the least is the ignore key. And this is very important because Dependabot doesn't really discriminate between any type of updates for an outdated package that it finds. So what we are doing here, especially on line 19, is to indicate that we want Dependabot to ignore semver major versions. And this is key because major versions of packages are usually contain breaking changes, and we are trying to automate the updating of packages in our repo. And in doing that, we just want to keep things up to date. We don't want to break our software. So in order to not break our software, we would like to ignore major updates to packages, just because from experience we know that major updates usually have breaking changes and you don't want your software to break. So if you want to update a package to a major version, that would have to be done manually, as should be, because as I said, there'll be breaking changes, and if there are breaking changes, you want to be able to get on top of it and change what ideally would be broken. So we don't want that to be done by bots. So for this line, we are just trying to make sure that Dependabot ignores the semver major updates, and for patch and minor updates, it should feel free to create PRs to update packages as such. So that's it for the Dependabot.yml config. There are a lot more keys and properties that we can use to really configure how we want the PRs to be created, but this is a good first step for Dependabot to create PRs for you and configuring how that works. Let's use Github Actions to approve Dependabot specific PRs. So these are PRs that have the actor as Dependabot bots. We'll look at that, and not just approve this PR. So GitHub, we're going to use GitHub Actions to approve the PRs and also merge it when all CI checks have passed. So that is another thing we're going to be looking at, and let's get into it. Let's create a file called merge.dependabot.yaml under workflows. So this is going to be a workflow that would run every time a Dependabot PR is open. So first things first, we'll provide the name of the workflow. The name that we're providing here is merge Dependabot PR. and this will be visible under the Actions tab on GitHub. And we specify an event that will trigger this workflow. And for us, we want to use the pull request target. We're using the pull request target as opposed to the pull request because we want to be able to have the context of the base PR, have the context be the base PR instead of being the merge commits. And we'll see why later. After specifying that, we want to specify the permissions of the GitHub token that is generated for this workflow. So every workflow has a GitHub token that is generated for it, and when that workflow is done, that GitHub token is deleted. So we want to specify a few permissions. We want to be able to write to the PR and have the contents as writes as well. We'll see why in a bit. And the next step is to specify the jobs. A job in GitHub Actions is a series of steps that we'll be taking when the workflow is run. So for us, we want to specify a job named Dependabot, and we want to specify also what machine that this workflow will run on. So remember, GitHub Actions are like a machine in the cloud. It can be an Ubuntu machine, it can be Mac, it can be Windows. So you can specify the particular machine that you want your workflow to run on. So for us, we're specifying Ubuntu latest. After that, we specify a couple of steps that we want to be run in the job. So the first step is always to check out the source code. And this uses a custom action that's created by GitHub to be able to check out the source code. And the next step would be to, after checking out the source code, we want to use the Dependabot metadata action to be able to fetch the metadata and figure out if it is a Dependabot PR or not. So this fetch metadata custom action checks if the PR was created by Dependabot. If it wasn't, it will fail. And we just specify an ID here, and this is just like an identifier name. We just call it metadata, and then we have to pass in the GitHub token that is generated for this workflow, which can be gotten from secrets, the GitHub token. And then the next is we want to be able to approve the PR. So after checking out the source code and making sure that it is a Dependabot PR, we want to approve the PR. And with this, we just specify the name of the step. We specify a script to be run. For us, we are going to be using the GitHub CLI command review. So this just enables us to approve the PR, and we're passing in this PR URL from here. And this is just an environment variable that we supply to this step, and we supply two, which is the GitHub action, the GitHub token, which we already supplied here as well, but this is a different step, and the PR URL, which we get from github.event.pullrequest.html URL. So this is how we get the URL of the current PR, and this is how we approve that PR using GitHub Actions. The next step would be to enable auto merge for Dependabot PRs. Remember that if we've passed this stage, it means that it's actually a Dependabot PR. So right now we want to enable auto merge for the Dependabot PRs, and we're just going to run this script that merges, we just want to specify that it's auto merge, and we want it to be squashed as well. So we do the same thing, we pass in the PR URL the same way as above, and we also pass in the GitHub token, because we need a GitHub token to be able to authenticate the commands that we are trying to run. And this is it. So these are the steps that we use for our Dependabot workflow. We check out the source code, we download the Dependabot metadata. If it's a Dependabot PR, it goes through to the next step where we approve the PR, and then we enable auto merge on the PR. And when all the required CI checks pass, it's going to merge the PR. So this is a simple workflow that we have for merging Dependabot PRs. We can see Dependabot created this PR a while ago, and first thing I want to draw attention to is the name of the branch. So if you remember, we had the separator for the branch names, which is this dash, and if you can see the dash, it is in between the Dependabot name, the package ecosystem we're using, the name of the package that we are bumping, and the new version. So we see we are bumping from 3.10.1 to 3.12.0. So that's where the separator that we defined, this is where we can see it. Secondly, another thing that we defined in the config file is the labels. And as you can see, we specified that we wanted only one label, which is Dependabot, and that's what we have here. Another thing that we also specified is the commit message, the prefix for the commit message. And this was something that we specified. If we didn't have this, the commit message would just be bump, the name of the package from previous version to current version. So this is stale, as we can see, and I want us to be able to see the different the checks and exactly how our GitHub action is going to work. So I'm going to recreate this. I'm going to ask Dependabot to recreate this PR, and then we're going to see what that looks like. So right now, it checks if the Dependabot config file is valid. It is valid. So it's running a bunch of other things. So as we can see, GitHub Actions has approved the changes, and it has also enabled auto merge. And this auto merge just means that when all the checks have passed, it would automatically merge the PR, and all the checks that are required must be done before this PR can be merged. So this is a very, very simple workflow to help you automate the updating of outdated packages. So this is almost done. This is the last required step. When this check is done, this PR will be automatically merged. I just combined automatic and magical. Yeah, it's one of those things. So we're just waiting for this to be done. It's running the TypeScript check just to make sure that nothing is wrong. And voila, everything passed. GitHub merged the PR, and also the bot deleted the branch, and you can see that it's merged. And I didn't press anything, as you can see. And if we go to the project, we see that 21 seconds ago it was merged. And if we take a closer look at the merge Dependabot PR action, the workflow, we ignore all of this. This is most important. So what we see here is that there are a couple of steps that are taken for this merge Dependabot PR workflow. The first thing is we want to set up the job, and I'll show this in the code as well. We want to check out the source code. We also use here a Dependabot Github action. It's a custom Github action that allows us to fetch Dependabot metadata, and this would fail if it's not a Dependabot generated PR. If it is, it would pass. So if this step passes, then we want to approve the PR, and this can be done using the GitHub CLI command for we have a lot of CLI commands now. GitHub is awesome like that, so we can approve a PR, we can review a PR, we can see the status of a PR. I'm going to link the GitHub CLI docs in the description below. And for us, we're just trying to approve this PR. And the next step is we want to enable auto merge for the PR. Is the same. We have a post checkout source code and complete job. So that is all that is actually needed for our Dependabot workflow to create a Dependabot PR, approve the PR if it's a Dependabot PR, enable auto merge, and that would just wait for all the required CI checks to pass, and then it would merge the PR. But remember, if a PR, if a check fails, if a PR check fails, this would not work. We will not be able to merge the PR because this, like I mentioned, the auto merge would only work if all required checks have passed. If you stay to the end, you're a rock star. Thanks for watching the video. Consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one. Peace.